We're going to be dealing with character tonight. First, a brief recap for those who are joining us for the first time and did not see the Dramatica overview program last week or the week before. Dramatica's central concept is called the story mind. Let me write that on my new dry marker board so that I can justify this purchase to the IRS when they come asking where the $12 went. Okay, story mind. And as a matter of fact, if you put that all in one word and put a .com after it, that's the Dramatica Theory website. Just go to storymind.com. My word, okay? My word, story mind. Why is it my word? Why is it important? Because Dramatica's central concept about the story mind is something that nobody ever said before in the whole history of stories. And we were just foolish enough to go down paths that everybody knew better than to look on and stumble across something like this concept. And therefore, because we were foolish enough, we were also very lucky, and we now have Dramatica. Story mind. What does it mean? That every complete story is an analogy to a single mind trying to deal with an inequity. Okay, but what does it mean? Okay, what it means is that rather than looking at characters, theme, plot, and genre as a bunch of people who are dealing with conflicting value standards, trying to accomplish something in a particular setting, Dramatica sees all of these areas as being different families of thought in a single human mind. Different families of thought. Characters are the motivations of a story mind. Theme, the value standards, conflicting value standards like we all have. Plot are the methodologies used by the story mind to try and resolve its difficulties, and genre is the overall personality of the story mind. What kind of a story mind, what kind of a mind is it that is driven by these motivations with these value standards to try and achieve things in this way? Now, last 2 weeks we gave you an explanation as to why such a thing should exist, and we proved it absolutely. If you missed them, you're out of luck, unless you go buy the tape for $14.95 with both classes on one of them for only 2 hours, okay? So, what we got here is the story mind with its motivations, evaluations, methodologies, and effectively its purposes, its personality. Now, when we look at this story mind, why is that important to us? Because we understand that a story works together holistically, that characters, which we're talking about tonight, are not individual people that you can just randomly throw into your story and hope that they work together. When is there a chemistry in your story with your characters? When the chemistry of your mind is working. Characters are the individual facets of your story mind. And just as each of us has sometimes when we're one way or another way, sometimes we're cowardly, sometimes we're brave, sometimes we're happy or sad, characters represent the different facets of our own mind, and they must, in your story mind, be able to coexist in the same way the different facets of your mind coexist, or you end up with a story that has a split personality. These characters that we're going to talk about tonight represent different aspects of a single mind, and you have to ask yourself in your story, would these characters all exist in the same mind? Would those motivations exist in the same mind, even if they're conflicting motivations? Now, the final thing we did of importance for tonight that we covered in our earlier classes is the concept of the 4 through lines. When you take this story mind and you look at it, yes?
Right closer to your side.
Closer to myself. When you look at the story mind, there are 4 different perspectives you can take of this story mind. You can look at it from the outside looking in, as if you hold it up and say, alas, poor mind. And that's the objective view. Objective. Okay? The objective view is when you stand on the outside looking in, kind of like a general on a hill watching a dramatic battle down below. You can see the big picture, just like you can watch neurons firing in a brain, but you don't really know what the brain is going through. You don't know what it's like to be that person. To do that, you have to go from the objective view and zoom yourself down into the shoes of one of the soldiers on the field, and that's the main character. The main character represents the audience position in the story. So now we have 2 points of view that an audience needs. Kind of the God's eye view, or the author's view, or the big picture, BP for objective. Or, in addition to that, we also need to explore the story from the inside to see what it's like to have this problem. In other words, what if this was our mind with these characters representing our thoughts, made tangible so we can watch the mechanism of our own mind? What if we put that mind into our heads, put it on, and say, now we're inside the story? Well, now you don't get the big picture. You're stumbling around trying to get out alive and do your job. But you really don't know what's over the next hill. You don't see that objective view. Now, the audience needs both of these. and they also need something else, is this main character is traveling along, trying to do the best he can. Suddenly in his path stands the obstacle character. This is another soldier, Soldier 2, S2 and S1. Soldier 2 is standing there, and he says, "Get off the path." Speaks, see? Okay. And Soldier 1 stands here as he gets closer and says, "Get out of my way." Okay? Soldier 2 says, "Get off the path." Soldier 1, "Get out of my way." Well, from the objective view, we can tell whether this character ought to get off the path or try and charge through him. You see, because of all the dramatic explosions going off, boom, boom, there's all kinds of smoke in between them. And the main character in the story can't see if the obstacle character is a foe trying to lure him into an ambush by making him get off the path, or if he's a friend who's trying to warn him away from a minefield on the road down ahead. And since that main character can't tell, he ends up having to make a leap of faith. But the whole time the main character is looking at the obstacle character. The same way we, in our own minds, stay in one place at one time and look at another kind of person we might be. And we say, well, this is who I am, but what if I became that person? We don't actually become that person. That's the devil's advocate within ourselves, the little voice that argues with us. And that's represented by the main and the obstacle character. Who we are as the main character, audience position in the story, and who we might become as the obstacle character, who represents an alternative paradigm, a different way of going about things. So, we sit here and we say, let's look at who I might become. You don't actually jump over and become that person. You don't make that change, because if you did, then you'd be over here and you would have made the change. Instead, you look at it from the outside, but still inside your mind. So this view of the main and the obstacle character, that still represents a very personal view, but the main character is where you're looking from, and the obstacle character is what you're looking at possibly becoming if you decide to change. And whether you change or not, that's the leap of faith the main character has to make. It's a leap of faith because the main character simply cannot see the big picture. Just as in our own lives, we can't see the big picture. Now, I said there were 4 different points of view that had to be explored. One of them was objective, one of them was main character, and then the obstacle character who's looked at, and then between them, as they get closer and closer, we need to examine the argument one makes to the other to see why each one argues their own belief system. And this is called the subjective story. So, let me erase this for a second, and I'll just write those up. We've got the objective from the big picture view, the main character, the most personal view from the inside, looking at the obstacle character, and between the main and the obstacle, there's the subjective story, okay, subjective story, which is the personal skirmish between the two. Those are 4 different camera angles on the same overall football game, and they're needed to quadrangulate on the truth of the matter, because the truth of the matter isn't any one of these points of view. They're all valid in our own lives, and everything looks a little different from each one, and each one has a little bit different information that it sees clearly. Only when they're all put together can we actually then say, we can sort of figure out from objective and subjective and main and obstacle that somewhere in here we get an idea of what the truth looks like when we see it from 4 sides. That's capital T truth. The Tao that can be spoken is not the eternal Tao, and the truth that is in a story will never be spoken directly.